Welcome back to the Varkha Chalani channel. Day, I seem to have lost count. I'm sure many of you would have lost count as well. This pandemic is lasting longer than many of us had envisaged. But I hope all of you are safe and well. In my last episode, I spoke about two aspects, comfort eating and alcohol, where I spoke about how many of us cope with trauma by overeating because the hypothalamus and the amygdala, parts of the brain, unfortunately do not teach the brain when to stop eating. Then I also spoke about alcohol, which helps release endorphins and numb physical and emotional pain. But a lot of people unfortunately misunderstood the concept of comfort eating and alcohol to believe that somewhere I was endorsing them as coping methods. No, not at all. I reiterate the idea that there are no right or wrong ways and everyone uses his or her own way to cope with trauma. But it is important for us to ask that why is it that some people lean towards comfort food and alcohol as a method for managing their trauma and their emotional distress. The reason many people self-destruct and run to food, which then causes other problems like obesity, hypertension, diabetes, etc. And then some people use alcohol, which then damages their liver and sometimes makes them alcohol dependent, is because they wouldn't have learned better methods of coping. A very important ask we have to raise is, are there any methods we could teach our children so that they can learn better coping skills rather than running to food or alcohol, which are self-detrimental and self-destructive? I picked up two crucial ways of building coping strategies for us and our children. Point one, a lot of us who are unable to cope within these very distressing times or with trauma in general are people who unfortunately haven't been taught life skills. What do I mean? Parents unfortunately are pandering to their children a lot and are not teaching them the art of managing disappointments and difficulties. So you will see children not being asked to step up and partake in household chores. It may sound very inane and simplistic, but I do believe that every child who is being asked to help at home, especially during these difficult times where there may be no house help, are developing life skills. And these life skills are very, very important to finally transition into coping skills. But parents are scared today to ask anything of their children. And these coddled children, who then become crippled teens, often turn out to be adults who are unable to manage any adversity. In fact, people who suffer from trauma believe that adversity is the end of life. So if you really want to learn the art of managing trauma, start young. I know you and me may be old enough, but it's never too late to start. Do things which will help you hone your life skills and of course bring up your children partaking in day-to-day responsibilities, especially during the pandemic. Point two, a lot of people are unable to cope with trauma because they suffer from something called discomfort anxiety. It's a very unknown phenomenon, this discomfort anxiety. Most people attribute anxiety to their ego, where they feel humiliated, bruised, or feel inadequate when someone talks to them or someone talks badly to them. But discomfort anxiety is also an emotional condition where when a person is being asked to face hardship, he or she does not know how to cope. They have never learned hardship as a way of life. If anything, these are people who are stuck in the neurological development of childhood. I'll explain. In childhood, the limbic system, which is the brain center for feelings, usually processes emotions and allows the child to experience fear, fright, anxiety, etc. The prefrontal cortex, which is the area of the brain which reasons and thinks through emotions, develops rather late, mostly at age 11 or 12. So the child usually depends on a parent to be able to help him cope with his frights and with his fears. Now, what happens is because the parent, who is also an immature adult, who's stuck in the developmental stage of purely going with feelings, what can he or she really help the child reason and think about his or her own fears? So, the person who's supposed to be actually a calmer and a soother for the child himself is a very fragile adult. You will see them unable to manage with their jobs. You will see them constantly complaining about their peers. There are people who usually constantly change tables at a restaurant or change rooms in hotels. The entire philosophy is, I can't bear discomfort. And instead of developing emotional muscle or resilience, they are stuck on the emotional stage of feelings. So if you really want to manage trauma, start using the prefrontal cortex of your brain, which subdues the limbic system and doesn't allow you to just get carried away with anxiety and fear. All people who are able to cope with trauma are usually people who use the ability to reason their anxieties. And more often than not, if you use that prefrontal cortex of your brain, you will find yourself much more capable. Because Alfred Adler, the great psychologist, said, experience is not what happens to you. Experience is what you make of the happening. The making comes with the reasoning ability to squelch those fears and anxieties, and that in turn helps us to learn how to cope. So let's ask our children to step up and give them life skills, so when they become adults, they have coping skills other than eating and drinking as a method or as a measure of management. And of course, let's stop living in the neurological development stage of only going with feelings and use our ability to reason and think through our traumas. Stay safe, stay well, and thank you for watching the Varkha Chulani channel. Till next week, it's goodbye and see you.